Welcome back. Come on, Barbie. Let's go party. Okay, I have to say this is one of the most all-time fun dates that I've been waiting on. Let's get into it in this video, episode 3. Let's talk all things Barbie, Brayden, Charity, and so much more. Join me in the video. Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Welcome back. So good to see you. I had to take off that pink boa. Just a little bit hot over here. But are you as excited about this episode as I was? Because I had seen this months ago, the Charity Barbie date. And given that the movie is dropping July 21st, so exciting. Everything going on with the premiere. Let's get into it. Okay. So the night starts off with a little bit of heaviness, right? We meet Brayden, and I've got my Charity doll here already in her pink. We meet Brayden, and he's been granted the one-on-one. But before we even get to that, there's like the drum roll, where Charity says, I just can't do this. I thought that was actually quite funny. I can't do this here. Because, as I recall, I think this is the first time a lead has actually said that. Usually, it's Jesse who comes in and announces you've got 30 minutes to pack. But here, some were saying a questionable pick. Charity picks Brayden for a one-on-one. And remember, what we saw last week was he was calling out her character. He's not so sure where he stands. He doesn't know if he could see himself getting down on a knee. And she then gives him a one-on-one. Well, we also know that Brayden makes for good TV. So the one thing I have to say about Brayden is there was this really funny YouTube video. And if you've ever taken my love style quiz, I highly recommend that you do. But I had gone deep into this thing I call cat, dog, puppy energy. And in terms of attachment styles, the dog, who I think is more like a puppy, is the person who is like the friend who's just excited to see you. And that's what I think of when Brayden. So in this video, the YouTube video, it's like you've got this roommate and you come home and the friend is like, let's go play. And that's what Brayden is. He's like that kind of puppy with exuberant energy. So I think she chose him on this date for really good reasons, right? He loves the San Diego Padres. They have a whole baseball date. But I also felt like it kind of broke up the energy in the house because the guys are all packing. And now instead of Brayden being on the bus, we saw that long bus ride. I think it's like, 2 hours, going to Oceanside. Brayden's out of the house and he's just friggin' exuberant, right? He is just so excited. And if I was going through a lot of stress like Charity, I might want to be with someone who's that exciting, right? Because he mixes it up and you kind of know what you're going to get with Brayden. So, but here's the thing, and we're going to get to it later, and I'm going to circle back at the end of this video to talk more about how I think Charity is perceiving Brayden, because I'm not really worried about it. But in the meantime, he's fun. And Charity herself says she likes to have fun, right? Which she gave him the first impression rose because she said, I just felt like we were sort of vibing on that level. And now they're in the helicopter flying over and he's pointing out like this brown speck of grass is where I grew up. I'm like, okay. And then of course they're flying over the mansion. And now remember last week, if Brayden had been in the mansion, he would have said, oh my God, I can't believe that they're doing that they're putting this in his face. But because he's in the helicopter, it's perfectly fine. And it is sweet and there is some chemistry going on between the two of them. Okay, so now he's like, oh my God, I can't believe we're going to be landing in the ballpark. Yes, they do. They land in the ballpark. I can't believe it. We have the whole place to ourselves. So again, like the puppy, he's just excited. Okay, so now they're playing ball and he talks about that he got hit in the face. And then there is this scene where she gets hit in the eye with the ball. And that just reminded me of the Brady Bunch. I know I'm aging myself with this clip, but this is the scene. Okay, super funny. I get it. Just reminded me of Jan. Oh my God, I got hit in the face with a football, I think. Okay, so now, is Charity missing the red flags? Okay, we're going to get to that. But I also want to pause. If you have not seen my last video, I broke all of this down. I talked about Nick Viall's video and that he said that Charity was missing all the red flags and that she didn't respond to the character question. And if you haven't seen it, stop and go watch that video too, because I have plenty to say from a psychological perspective. And I still think Charity's doing a phenomenal job. Okay. But she got someone for this date who is fun. Now, there's something else in psychology that I want to talk about, which is a really fascinating study. So they had this study done. I can't remember the year. I'd have to go back and check the reference, but I can remember the study explicitly that you are on a dating app, okay? This is a study. They did a research, and you don't know how somebody feels about you. There's the people who like you definitively. They swipe right on you, and you're like, okay, that's good. And then the people who don't like you. But then there are the people who you don't have feedback from. And those are the people who hook us the most. And this is what I think is happening with Charity and Brayden. He's the only one, right? Brayden is the only one who's saying, I'm not so sure. And part of that, I think, is okay to not be sure because we all admit, right, it's super early. But he's the only one. And when everyone else is gaga over us, the one person that stands out is the person we are not certain about where they stand. It's a way of intermittent reinforcement, okay? If you want to create a high reward system, like I'll use the example of slot machines, you don't know when it's going to hit, okay? And in what they call like a Skinner box, Pavlovian therapy, when the bird doesn't know if I peck the lever, I'm going to get a pellet of food or not. If I want to reinforce high pecking behavior, you're going to do something called intermittent reinforcement, meaning you don't know when it's going to come. So same thing with a slot machine. You don't know when this next coin you put in or dollar or whatever or button that you hit that you might win. And that can be very reinforcing versus someone who is always positive and compliments you all the time. Okay, just a little psychology because I want to help you learn something about this. Like, why do we get connected with people like Brayden? And I think that's what's happening here. All right, back to Charity. She's doing backflips because she was in cheer in college. And I just think she just nailed that. And I thought it actually was kind of funny that here's Brayden trying to do a backflip and she's like, you're on your own. Okay. So that was the date. But here's the thing. Why I think Charity is playing this all very smartly. In the ITMs, and I've heard from people on reality shows, it's kind of like the ITMs are where you go to be with your thoughts and you say things that are more real than you would in person, right? Like you almost like relish, even people on Love Island say you relish like the sanctity of the place where they filmed the ITM. So Charity is talking out loud. Brayden reminds me of my ex. I'm seeing some red flags. So she's not naive to this. Whether she acts on it or not is a completely separate thing. We're going to get to that because that's production, that's editing. But I think she's well aware of who Brayden is. And I think there's just other things going on here. Okay, so let's get to the Barbie date. This is now the group date. I always say, like, can you not? And here's my Ken doll. And all the guys have a lot of Kenergy, so shall we say. Boom, boom. Okay, so there's a lot of Kens. And again, the movie Greta Gerwig has done, Gerwig, I think, has done a phenomenal job on the Barbie date. They created the whole like Barbie dream house and everything. And here I am, you know, a more mature woman, shall I say, who's still playing with her Barbies. I have a ton of Barbies. I just love them. But what's interesting is that Warner Brothers owns The Bachelor and the movie, the Barbie movie. It's not Disney. So what was fascinating then is Simu Liu, who's in the Barbie movie, big star. He comes on and does a little presentation with the guys and says, like, charity's worth fighting for. I thought that was super cute. But I love that they have JoJo and Jordan. The perfect couple to host this. JoJo, who is beautiful, and it's kind of like the same size as Charity. They both are tiny women. And there is Jordan, her Ken. They're looking fabulous. But JoJo and Jordan are hosting their own show about like divorce and couples getting back together. So I think they really have a lot going for them, and they're the perfect hosts for this. So when the guys walk in and they see this decked out Barbie kind of place, and they all have to run to go get their costumes, I thought Caleb in particular, he was running for the Cowboy Ken costume because that's a big one in the movie. And I loved like the skater, there's the rollerblader that Joey gets, and then Tanner is the ice skater. I just think the costumes were really well done. And I'm guessing they put a lot of money into production for this date because it was just one of the most fun, and the crowd. But who was your favorite? Okay, again, Joey the skater, Xavier, I really thought with the little dog, that was adorable. We needed to see more of that puppy. I did a little reel on that. I had a little puppy. But what I also thought was just hysterical was the ITMs. When the guys are talking about the other guys performing, like, oh my God, he's really awful. I mean, let's face it, none of them were really great singers. Yes, Caleb belted out some tunes, but all of them, the way they were just cutting each other up, I thought that was really fun. To me, I would much rather watch a date like this than guys killing each other in football or something. So I just thought that was hysterical. And when they're all walking in and Charity's got her beautiful short outfit and those heels, my God. And all of them are like screaming Charity and John as like the naked Ken. They just brought it. And the guys, the energy, they were pumped up. This is a big deal. You're going out in front of a crowd of, I don't know, 200-300 people, having to come up with a song. Girls just want to have fun. I don't know why they chose that song, but Charity was in great form. Everyone was excited. There was just a lot of great energy. Dotun was first. He was the astronaut, the way that he's doing the move, really cute. And his blonde Ken wig was just hysterical. I thought actually Dotun really hit some nice notes. If the editing is correct, he went first and he pulled Charity up on the stage to dance with him. And he was kind of, he wasn't actually singing it, but kind of mouthing the words. And I thought that was great. But everyone was just there for it. And then we get to Sean. So here is my Sean, my Ken doll. And I don't have a denim, double denim. I don't have a denim vest. But anyway, here he is Sean. And he does kind of look like Ken. So I thought, well, perfect. And they probably even kept him for this reason. But it was a little bit much for me when you're talking almost about yourself in third person, you know, what a chiseled, what did he say, jaw he has. And like, this is my moment. I'm the Ken. But I thought Charity played along really well with that. And after all, he did get the crowd really amped up, right? He is, you know, singing, not very good, but at least it was kind of on point. And he's kissing her and they're making out. And she said, I forgot that the crowd was there. And of course, she's going to reward him for that part of the date. And I thought that was well earned, that Sean was really performing, and that was great. Okay, now they're on the pier and they're kissing. Okay, didn't do much for me. The problem is then when Sean comes back with the guys and he just doesn't read the room, right? Okay, you just had all this special time with her. Some guys didn't get to talk to Charity. And here's what I would have wanted. I actually would have wanted the guys to stay in their costumes for the date. Like, I feel like I just wanted to see more of Skater Ken. I wanted to see more of, was it Michael with the white fur because that's a big character in the movie. Ryan Gosling has a similar white kind of coat. I wanted to see more of that because I just thought it was so fun. And when the guys are kind of walking up the stairs leaving, you're just like, oh my gosh. And then, of course, we had Aaron S., and he's like, well, if you want Sean, somebody, you know, who's going to wine and dine you, but I'm somebody who's going to go fishing, and, you know, I'm a man's man. I talked last week about the different levels of competition, and I just thought, okay, the guys are jealous, right? But the energy that I really like is like Dotun, John, Xavier. Not too competitive, but just really kind of more compassionate, a little bit more quiet. Okay, so the night portion of the Barbie date feels to me like a separate kind of date because they're not in character. And let's face it, Charity already knows who her front runners are. But who stood out for me on the one-on-ones is John. John talking about being a gospel guitar player. I thought it was hysterical when he said that if I could sing, I probably wouldn't be single. But he's plays guitar. We find out that he played basketball. And he says that I'll be here for you when you're ready. But he also pumps her up and says, like, I know you're famous and everybody wants to be with you. That's why I want to be with you too. And I thought, again, just a perfect note. And she always says she likes John. Okay. Now, the biggest moment for me in the evening date was Dotun. Okay. And this is why I think he's kind of going ahead as one of the front runners. When she said, I want to take you to a room, my room, for more safety, I think she said, or just to make it special. This to me reminded me of kind of Zach going to the museum with Katie, where you create sort of like a specialness. Now, Charity is reassuring Dotun that she's really interested in him. But he says, I don't know, some of the sweetest things. It kind of reminded me of Tayshia's proposal or Zach's proposal to Tayshia. Remember where he was like, you make me a better man and a better person. And here we have Dotun, who says, you make me a better person. I can learn from you. I haven't been this excited by other women who aren't as confident as you, and you're becoming the ideal woman for me. I'm like, ooh, heart flutter. Wow. Like, that's even more sincere than saying I'm falling for you, right? Like, that is so special. And now Charity is welling up. She said, I don't hear this from people. And part of me says, well, girl, why don't you hear this from people? But the sweetness and how he delivers the message, I just really feel like he's this big guy who can be goofy, which she loves, but also be vulnerable. And I thought, wow, those are the traits that she's looking for. So I am going to think that Dotun goes really far. Xavier, when we see him in the van knitting the scarf and then giving her the scarf, that was another amazing moment. Like, I think bringing something from home is one thing, but like making it in the moment, it just felt wholesome, right? I don't care that there's drama going on around the house. I'm just going to knit you this scarf, and a beautiful scarf. It had a little bit of pink in it, I think. So that was super sweet. But the way that Charity responded to Dotun in particular, that for me felt really special. Like there's something happening. Okay, and here's my Dotun doll. And the way that Dotun, okay, well, he's like this tall, and Charity are responding to one another, I thought, are these two falling in love? Like there's something really sweet happening here between these two. And then Dotun gets the group rose and Sean didn't, which I thought was just appropriate because let's face it, Charity is reinforcing the guys who are being vulnerable with her. And we really saw Dotun do that in that lovely interaction that they have. Okay, so let's now move it along. And let me know in the comments what you thought about the Barbie date, because I just thought they were just, it was again, really well done. All right, well, let's talk about Warwick. I have to say, I feel bad for poor Warwick. And I saw this video of this little girl who is, and I'll show it here, like getting dragged on a carousel because she's so tired and she's sleepy. And it's like, oh, Warwick, honey, what was happening? But the one thing I don't know if you noticed that I thought production, like they're just doing some funny things. It kind of reminded me of like the Annalise things where she had trauma and then they would like show the bumper cars or something. But there's crickets happening. Did you pay attention? Like if you notice the sound, I went back and I'm like, they're talking and then there's these moments of silence and there's literally crickets. Very subtle, but I'm like, that's what we hear, just crickets. And how apropos the analogies here that love is like a roller coaster and then they're on a roller coaster, but they're on a lot of rides. And Warwick says that amusement parks makes me sleepy. Okay, and I looked this up. Is this a thing? Well, usually you're in a long day in the sun, you're standing in line for the rides. Of course, that would make you sleepy. But this is an evening date. There's nobody else there. And so I wondered, and here's the thing, and I did a reel about this, and people in the comments or were DMing me and saying, you know, maybe Warwick has motion sickness and he got sick. Could be possible. And you know when you're sick, you feel really sleepy. Or he's just a nap king, or he just really wasn't into Charity. It could be 100 different things. Does he have narcolepsy? Somebody said. I don't know, but that's one thing. I mean, that you feel bad for Warwick because the sleepy part, he really can't control, right? He did say that he's not a late night person. He's a daytime person. And let's face it, the producers probably put him on this really late date, knowing that. Like, they tend to use these things. Okay. So I'm okay with the sleepiness. That didn't bother me as much. But, and a lot of people said he's just relatable. The one thing I will have to say is that when I get in a car, wow, I totally fall asleep. My husband's driving and I'm out. I don't care where. And then I get home and I'm wide awake. But I even fell asleep on a train. I was in Chicago. I used to go to school at U of I, University of Illinois, and I took the train there. And I fell asleep on a daily basis on the train. There was a news crew on the train because they were filming, traveling in Chicago at the holidays or something. And I said to myself, oh, good. There's a news crew in the cab. I'm going to stay awake. And sure enough, I was sleeping on the train on the news. I told no one to watch the news because I woke up and I'm like, oh my God, I hope that wasn't on. And sure enough, I was on the news sleeping. Some people, it's like why you put kids in a car because they just like, it's the motion that causes you to fall asleep. But that's not the problem. The problem is talking about his previous relationships. Okay. It's like he's on an interview and he's saying, I have no experience and I suck. Because Charity, bless her heart, she's trying so hard. What's your favorite ice cream, Warwick? What are your traits in relationships? Like, what do people say about you? And he has nothing to say. These are the crickets. I don't know why people would want to date me. So that's the part. And Charity, again, is like being a consummate host and just trying to like do a lot and sort of fill in. But he could have scooped her ice cream and he could have offered a little bit more or even said something like, Charity, tell me a story about yourself. And when she says, you know, I'm really sorry I have to send you home, and we all get it, makes perfect sense, there's just no connection, he's relieved. But the other moment that was hard to see is that Warwick thinks the date is going well. And, you know, they're kind of poking fun of him, but he's like, yeah, I think things are going great. And you're like, oh, back to Sean, not reading the room really well. So what do we learn? What do we learn from this? Warwick, even though you're anxious, even though amusement parks aren't your thing, I think you really have to kind of like jazz yourself up, right? You have to kind of put your best foot forward, because this is how dating is. You don't have a lot of chances, and if you can't step up, right, you're going to be out. Okay, I want to come back to Brayden, because a lot of people were saying they're kind of like losing faith in Charity. Again, watch the Nick Viall video because I break it all down, but I don't see it that way at all. And I think that people, if you haven't had experience and you don't know how the show is filmed and edited and produced, you might think the same thing too. And somebody said, well, Zach got rid of all the kind of dramatic people pretty early. And Zach's season was also a little bit boring. But I don't think we're talking about the same level, because the ability that Charity has to hold space, to have conversations, to show up, to also be incredibly positive. That's what I love about this season, is that in previous seasons, the Bachelorette would say, oh, this is hard. This is so hard. And we see already in episode 3, maybe more tears or crying or just talking about how difficult it is, versus Charity, who's saying, I'm so grateful. Like, even her first date with Aaron, like, oh my God, if this is as great as it's going to be, I'm so excited for my own journey. And that's what makes it fun to watch, when the lead is excited about their journey, because something's working, because men like Dotun are stepping up, and Xavier and Joey and John. And when all these great men who also have jobs and are nice looking, this is just a good group of men. But we don't see that. We see her taking in the information. She's saying, oh yeah, that's Brayden. And do I really need to over-respond to this? Okay, so here's how these shows go. Again, I've been watching from the beginning. I also read the Game of Roses book, How to Win the Bachelor. And they keep the villain, just for you to know, usually till week 5 or 6. Like, that's the script. Okay. There is no script, but that's really the theme of it. So production is in your ear saying, you're not going to end up with them. You already know who your final 4 usually are, because who you vibe with. So what difference does it make if you keep the other people? And as I said last week, it also, having a Brayden allows you to see how the other men are handling the controversy and the stress. Back to an attachment theory, you get to see how people are responding to that person. And so we see how people are responding to Sean and to Brayden, because at this episode 3, they're kind of the bad guys, right? We get to see Aaron S. kind of having problems with Sean and with Brayden. We get to see Aaron having problems with Brayden. And interesting enough, men and women are very divided on this topic. Take Dave Neal. He's a man, of course. He's a lovely guy. In fact, if you haven't seen it, I did a Driving with Dave episode. He lives down in LA. Dave comments on everything Bachelor. You have to follow his channel if you don't already. But Dave thinks that Brayden is a nice guy, that he is super sweet, and a lot of people feel like he's being misunderstood and he might be getting a bad edit. The women, on the other hand, see Brayden more like your toxic ex. And people even compared Brayden and joking around with the Jonah Hill, Sarah Brady episode. That Jonah Hill, who was very controlling and telling Sarah what she could or couldn't do, that it made him upset and he wants to call it boundaries. Having said that, we're not there, because this is not a long-term relationship. This is at the beginning of a relationship. But what I see is that Brayden really has more of an anxious attachment style. I've mentioned this in many other episodes, that he needs a lot of attention, right? Charity is reinforcing him, telling him, I want you to be here. And remember last week, right? He's threatening to leave at the drop of a hat if you don't tell me what I want to hear. And he's acting as if he is the Bachelor and Charity should do more to convince him to stay. But I don't think Brayden is that naive. Some people were saying that somebody else put him on the show. He didn't even know what the process was. But you catch up pretty quickly. And he is bringing it in the ITMs. So I don't think he's naive. He, in the back end, he's saying, you know, the whole Will Smith, Chris Rock thing. And that's antagonistic, right? That feels like that has a lot of energy beyond a puppy in my mind. I, on the other hand, I can see it both ways. I really want to say I see myself as being kind of more in the middle. So the lesson to learn about Brayden is that he's the guy who says to a woman in dating, well, you know, I'm not ready for a relationship. I haven't gotten over my ex. I don't know if I'm ever going to get married. But then he shows up completely like a boyfriend. And when you confront him and say, hey, I thought you said you didn't want a relationship, then they can conveniently say, you're right, I don't. And that's, to me, the lesson to learn if you're ever in a situation like that and you're getting mixed messages and something just doesn't feel right, because I don't get the feeling that Brayden's making Charity feel safe or secure or comfortable. He's bringing fun, is what he's bringing. And because the season gets heavy and you don't know who is really there for you, I think she's responding to that. So yes, it's okay to be skeptical and not know if you can see yourself getting down on a knee. But it's also not okay to say, you know, I don't want somebody to date 20 other men, especially because that's the premise of the show. You went on the show. Another question people came up, is it gaslighting? No, it's not. It's not gaslighting. Why? Because gaslighting is a completely different thing where he would be denying. So Charity comes to Brayden and says, hey, Brayden, I've heard that you're questioning my character. And he says outright, that's what he says. He's not denying that. He's not saying, who, me? What? I didn't say that. What are you talking about? That's what gaslighting would be. He's owning his stuff. And that's where it feels nuanced, right? It's like he's using what she wants, which is he's being vulnerable, but he's also controlling when, where, and how I'm going to share what I do. And at the beginning of their date, on their one-on-one, I forgot to say this. So he says, in the ITM at least, I don't want to go there. You know, I'm kind of an upbeat person and I don't want to talk about my past. I don't want to like get down about it. So that to me feels like a little bit self-centered. And I think that's what the women were picking up on. The guys are saying, he's a nice guy. You know, he has questions like everybody else and he brings it up intellectually. And so you think, well, maybe it's everybody else who's ridiculous. But I don't think Charity's going to pick him anyway. I think the producers tell you, again, keep somebody for till week 5 or 6 because it creates some drama. And people in the comments, especially on Instagram, are really harsh. They're like, the season is boring. And people just repeat these things, but I don't see it that way. I see that big picture. There are some front runners, and sometimes they even kind of suppress that to keep us like, ooh, who is this person? Because I still think there's something going on with Dotun, Xavier, Aaron B., Joey, like the guys that she has a connection with. Okay, so now it's the rose ceremony. And I think the order was important. She does call out Aaron B. first. He gets the first rose. I think she's saying, thank you for coming forward. I don't know what you think. Again, last week I talked about competition. It's not great to throw people under the bus. Aaron feels propelled again at the cocktail party to tell Charity about Brayden. It's a fair point. He wants to protect her. I think he has to balance that with building a connection with her. But I do think that she sees Aaron as safe. So she's going to keep him and she's going to reward him for stepping up from her, because Adrian, if you remember, also had that same kind of montage. I'm looking out for you, but I don't think there was a connection with Adrian. So Adrian goes home, Aaron S. goes home, and James goes home. And we didn't really even get to see James at all. So, but here's the thing. People will always say like, oh, I got gypped. I didn't get to spend time with her, but she already knows who the guys are. So, Okay, and I don't think she has problems. She's not that conflicted. Like, you got to go. Warwick, you got to go. There's no connection here. So there was also a discussion on Bachelor Data about charities ending some of these rose ceremonies, ending the cocktail parties early or canceling cocktail parties. I don't think the data actually reflects what's really happening, because in our last Bachelorette with Gabby and with Rachel, what you'd see is there like a lot of emotional breakdown and then a kind of like, I'm out, I can't do this. These, rose ceremonies or cocktail parties might get canceled a little bit early. But here's the other part that I've seen in the back end is sometimes production has strict hours on how long they can work. Now we've got Brayden over here who's taking up all these ITMs. Sometimes they're over the clock, and so because they're union workers, they can only work so many hours, they have to cut it off. So I think that's what's happening. I don't feel like Charity's driving all of that, like she's getting that overwhelmed. I really think she's handling herself well, having important conversations, holding her end, and compared to, again, some other bachelorettes who would be upset, like, oh, they didn't all stand up when I walked in. I don't see any of that happening. So, so excited for next week. It looks like we're traveling to Washington. We've got some outdoor dates. I'm not sure how outdoorsy Charity is. I know she's going to roll with it, but I think we see a date with Dotton. And I'm forgetting who another date is, and probably there's going to be some kind of group date again. And this season is going so fast. But what do you think? Do you think that it's just a big red flag and Charity's missing it and she should have responded differently? Do you think she should have gotten rid of Brayden? Or do you agree with me that it's just good TV and the producers are telling her, what's the harm? Just keep him around. So let me know what you think. And let me know if you're going to go see the Barbie movie, because I will be there with full Barbie on. And it comes out again on the 21st. So I'll see you actually next week before then.